2003, Olympia, Washington. When pressed to prove that their whining about the oppression of women in their own country makes sense, Western feminists resort to a contextual shell game by referring to conditions in primitive nations to make their case. In Canada, the Legislative Assembly of Alberta yawned and let die Bill 219, which would have created the Alberta Commission on the Status of Men Act. The purposes of the commission were to have been 1. Study health problems unique to men or which predominantly affect men and make recommendations on appropriate government initiatives. 2. Examine and advise on issues of cultural bias and stereotyping affecting men. 3. Review, analyze, and advise on challenges confronting men, including educational prospects for boys and young men, mortality and suicide rates, family relations, and the role of fathers. 4. Review and recommend initiatives and programs to enable men to develop career skills, including continuing education. On the surface, you might think this would have been a laudable effort, but no, the truth, according to the Canadian feminist columnist Mindell Jacobs, is that men don't need help. For example, there is no need, she says, for battered men's shelters. Quote, worldwide, the victims of serious domestic violence are overwhelmingly female. There is no pressing need to set up government-funded sanctuaries for abused men, close quote. Mindell Jacobs, there's no need to study the status of men, Edmonton Sun, December 9th, 2003. You know, she has a point. Worldwide, most victims of domestic violence are women. It's truly terrible how women are treated throughout the undeveloped parts of the world. Funny thing, though, Bill 219 isn't or wasn't about helping men in undeveloped parts of the world, but in Canada, where, as in America, there are thousands of shelters for women, but few, if any, for men, and thousands of governmental and institutional organizations to help women, but few, if any, for men. Yes, but worldwide? No, worldwide doesn't matter in the context of domestic policies. Oppression of women in Africa does not justify the oppression of men in Alberta. How women and men in other nations relate is important, but irrelevant to domestic policies affecting how women and men relate right here, wherever here happens to be. But beginning in the mid-1980s, feminists discovered that they could promote their national agendas and counter local attempts to establish equal justice for both women and men with references to international oppression of women. In short, they used the international oppression of women to justify the national oppression of men. Certainly, it's laudable to promote fair and equitable treatment of women throughout the world, but to use this as a ploy to diminish and dismiss inequitable treatment of men back home exposes their hypocrisy and their hatred of men. 2016, Olympia, Washington. The error MRAs make, the error that until recently I continued to make, was in assuming that we could use the political processes to make things fair for both sexes. But in pseudo-democratic republics in which women hold the majority of the votes, they've discovered that they can use their vote to enslave men. In a society in which women have made themselves the enemy, there is no plan by which we can use violence to free ourselves. Bowing out, going on strike, going galt, men going their own way is the only response that's practical. For the Backlash at Backlash.com, my name is Rod Van Mechelen.